harder in the way they call their games. You can't touch anybody in the NBA.
Yeah.
They've got something they've called the Freedom of Movement Initiative. And listen, I realize it's because there are 1,000 officials in NCAA basketball, and they can't control them. The NBA's got complete control over their officials. They're going to call the game the way the NBA says they're going to call it. But it's a better game. There's more flow. There's less bumping of cutters. There is more freedom of movement, as they call it. In college basketball, it's way more physical than the NBA. Way more physical. And the one thing you hear from scouts that I talk to more than anything else is how much harder it's gotten to evaluate college games because it's so ridiculously physical, whereas those things would be fouls in the NBA.
And we like Wall's competitiveness, right?
Yeah, the kid comes to play, and he works hard. He keeps his mouth shut. For the most part, he listens, which is getting more and more unusual. He is. I think he is overall a very good kid.
And defensively is the thing that we don't hear a lot of talk with him. I think he's going to be potentially like a great defensive player, not like good or very good. I mean, I really think he could be one of the best 5 or 6 defensive players. What do you think?
He could be. He's got long arms, and he is athletic and can run, and he anticipates pretty well. He had a pretty good steal rate at Kentucky. And he anticipates. So being able to jump into a passing lane. I mean, there are some little things he doesn't do. Like just in college, he doesn't jump to the ball, which he doesn't take away the ball side of the cut, stuff like that. Stuff that coaches would get their undies in a bunch over. But if he did that, nobody would have scored on Kentucky this last year. But their guys were so young, it was hard enough to keep them focused on other things, let alone the minor details of defense.
As somebody who loves the college game, how much do you hate the whole notion that, like, what would happen with Kentucky last year, where you're just recruiting a one-season team, basically? And I don't know. It's just not fun. I don't know how their fans feel an attachment to these guys that are going to be gone in 8 months.
Yeah, I kind of given up on that. It used to bother me, but it doesn't bother me anymore. It's kind of the way it is, so I don't really worry about it anymore. I think it's hurt the NBA more than it's hurt college. I thought years ago when you had guys that were bolting to the NBA after not having played a single college game, and kids didn't want to go to college anymore. I worried about it a little bit back then, but the college game has gotten it's a lesser game now than it was even when I played 25 years ago. The teams were better when I played, which is shocking because the players aren't better. It's just we were older and we played together. So a top 5 team 25 years ago would beat just about any top 5 team now. But the game's more popular. I mean, there are more people watching it. It hasn't hurt the popularity. The NCAA tournament's way more popular than it used to be. So it hasn't hit the interest level, which is really, for any enterprise, the bottom line. But I think it's affected the NBA negatively. I don't think the NBA game. I think having these younger players has hurt the product. They come in, they're not marketed. People don't know who they are like they used to. And I think it would be better if they could keep the kids in college longer. I think it would be better for college too, but I would do it because selfishly I think it would be better for the NBA, and they'd have a better chance to evaluate the players. They wouldn't make quite as many mistakes as they do now. They'd still make mistakes, but I think both games would be better for it.
2 years would be good, right?
2 years would be better than what they have now.
Yeah.
And this is where, Bill, like I got clued in that the agents run the Players Association. As you know, like it's a collective bargaining agreement. The only way that you could keep a kid from going in out of high school is through an age restriction that's collectively bargained between the league and the Players Association. Now, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that it's in the best interest of the Players Association to keep younger players out as long as possible because they're not members of the union, and it preserves union jobs longer. So, if John Wall's not able to come out now, some veteran point guard's going to keep his job until he comes in.
Yeah.
So, but the Players Association won't give in on that. And the reason is because the agents run it. It's in the players' best interest to keep the new players in college longer, but they won't do it.
It's too bad. And you make a good point about, I know what I grew up with in the 80s, and especially like I remember watching the Big East on Monday nights, and it was like watching pro teams. You guys that have been playing together 3-4 years, and guys at multiple draft picks on each team and guys that were 21, 22. Like James Worthy, what was he, 30 by the time he left North Carolina?
Yeah, he left. James Worthy left North Carolina after his junior year.
I know, and he had full beard.
Yeah, and everybody was like, oh my God, James Worthy's leaving early. And Michael Jordan left after his junior year. That was 1984. And I was in college at the time at Duke, and you would have thought that he had decided not to go to college at all, the way people were talking about that. Michael Jordan is leaving early, and now there's no way in today's game, there's no way he would ever last to be a junior, given how good he was. And
but on the other hand, though, it's
killed the game. It's really hurt it.
On the other hand, though, think about Sampson, who, if he had come along 12 years later, maybe doesn't even spend 1 year in college or 1 year and that's it. He played 4 years at Virginia, had maybe 3 good ones in the NBA, got hurt, was never really the same, was out of the league in 8 years. And he basically wasted, or I guess maybe wasted's not the right word, but he spent 4 years in college, and 3 of those years could have been NBA years that he was making money. I guess he would say that maybe these guys should come out after 1 year, right?
Well, but it depends on how you look at it. I mean, he was out of the league because of injury and nothing else. And I've kind of looked at it a different way. I mean, I've looked at it over the years that there are really 3 reasons you leave early. One, if you are absolutely ready to be an impact player in the NBA. If you're ready to step into that league and dominate and be an impact player, then go. Or number 2, if you absolutely positively have to have the money. If you're in such dire financial straits that you have to go, then that's a legitimate reason. Yeah. And the third reason is if you're a fraud and you're afraid to get found out, you should go. Guys who are the real thing can go whenever they want. Like, Tim Duncan or Grant Hill weren't hurt by staying in college for 4 years. And there are a whole bunch of other players we could choose. If you're the real thing, you can go whenever you want. So if LeBron had gone to college or Kobe had gone to college, one, it wouldn't have hurt their games. I think it would have improved their games. And it certainly wouldn't have hurt, it's kind of the old line from Wall Street, how many boats can they water ski behind? Do they really need much more money? It's just a question of what they want to do. When you're the real thing, you can do whatever you want.
The interesting thing that we don't quite know yet, because we're just seeing the effects of Garnett and Kobe. Well, we've seen already the effects negatively with Jermaine O'Neal and people like that. But these guys that are jumping right in, and they're almost aging at a different rate than NBA players should age. I think Kobe's 31 or 32 right now, but probably has the body of what Michael Jordan had at age 35. So maybe we'll figure out eventually that it's actually bad to put those kind of miles on your body when you're 18, 19, 20, in that range. Do you think, or no?
That could be true. I don't know the answer to that. I think it comes down to what each individual wants to do. The NBA needs to do what's in the best interest of the league, and as a business. So what their studies say. They need to make the decisions based upon that. How much money they can make, what people are watching, what's best. Whether it's better for a kid. Like I always hear these arguments about, well, Tiger Woods didn't have to go to college, or tennis players can play when they're 14, or all that. But the difference is they get to pick their schedules. Like if an 18-year-old kid wants to be a pro golfer or a pro tennis player, they can play in 8 tournaments if they want to. They can play in 28. If you jump in with both feet in the NFL or the NBA or Major League Baseball, you're playing when they say, and you're playing the full schedule, and you're living the life of an adult. And so it's a totally different deal, and different, kids mature at different rates. And, I just feel like it'd be better for the NBA to keep the kids in school longer so they could evaluate them better. I mean, look at football. I mean, football gets 4 years to evaluate those guys, and they still make horrendous mistakes. And, basketball gets 1 to evaluate the really, really great prospects. And of course, in that amount of time, mistakes are going to be made. It's inevitable.
Yeah, and if you look at, let's just look at the past decade. I think Carmelo was ready to come into the NBA when he did. He was a little young, but maybe not as a person, maybe he wasn't ready, but skill-wise he was. And I would say the same for Durant. I think if those guys had stayed a second year, they really would have lit it up. And, both of them maybe would have been better, maybe not. But I think somebody like Dwayne Wade, Brandon Roy, those guys that extra year really, really, really helped them. And what if Dwayne Wade comes out as a freshman? Does he have the same type of career he has? I don't know.
Yeah, he might not have had a career at all. You're absolutely right. And it's not an issue. People ask all the time, well, is this kid ready? And the answer most of the time is no. But ready doesn't matter anymore. Now it's just ready to be drafted. Does he want to be drafted? Do they want to come into the league? Or some of the kids are dying lousy to get out of school. They don't want to go anymore.
Yeah.
And they've decided at a really early age. There was a problem, Bill, when kids could come right out of high school. They were having a problem that some kids were intentionally trying not to qualify for under NCAA standards to get a scholarship, so they could say, "Well, I have to go pro," because they didn't want any part of going to college. Now guys are having to knuckle under and do their work and all that stuff because they're going to have to spend a year in school unless they pull a Brandon Jennings or Jeremy Tyler and go overseas. I just think like we're shortchanging these kids. I've never agreed with the principle that, say you are LeBron James. So LeBron James shouldn't go to school. He doesn't have to, and it's not it's a free country. He can choose not to. But I think he'd be a heck of a lot better off if he did. Whether he went pro out of high school or not, he should have his butt in college during the summers to get a degree. I heard Kenny Anderson got his degree the other day. I mean, that's a great thing.
That is a good
thing. A lot of these kids they can't coach if they want to stay in basketball. Who's hiring people that don't have degrees? I mean, I don't see a whole lot of people getting hired if they haven't completed college.
Kenny Anderson is an awesome idea of why you should have to stay at least 2 years. I think he was one.
Yeah,
if I
there are a whole bunch
correctly.
of them.
Yeah.
And,
two I like two, though.
What's that?
I like 2. I think 2 years is a nice compromise. Even if somebody like Carmelo or Durant had stayed 2 years, wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world for them. I don't think it sets them back. They miss out on a year's salary, but ultimately all they're doing is making their brand bigger. They're dominating the tournament. They become, they're really whetting people's appetite. Oh, I know this guy. I watched this guy in college for 2 years. I can't wait to see him become a pro. And I think that, I think all of that is a positive.
Well, absolutely. And that's why the NBA draft is not as big of a deal. Maybe it wouldn't be as big a deal, period, but it's not even close to the NFL draft because everybody knows who the players are.
Yeah.
You know who the college players are in football. You don't have as much of a chance to get to know the best players in basketball. And it would be, the college game has gotten so hard for the average fan to follow, and simply because it changes so much. You used to be able to tell, well, who's going to be good next year. When the Final Four was over, you'd be able to. Everybody knew who the top 5 was going to be next year. Now you have no clue.
Yeah.
You got to take a pencil and paper out and scratch your head for a while to figure out who's coming back, and what freshmen are going to be good and all that stuff. It's gotten too hard to follow, and I think it's amazing that the college game does as well as it does, given all the hurdles in front of it.
Just because of the pools, I'm convinced. The Evan Turner is a good example of somebody who, by staying an extra year, really, 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 really helped him out. The interesting thing about him is he could kind of float around and play some different positions. So, for instance, if Utah won the lottery, which is a little far-fetched, they don't have great odds, but if they did, that's somebody who could back up Darren Williams, play shooting guard, play some small forward, guard different types of guys. Is he the most flexible guy that we've seen in this draft in a while?
I've kind of likened him, even though it's not a perfect comparison. I've never been good at that stuff. What NBA player is this kid like? He reminds me a little bit of Brandon Roy because of his versatility. He's not as good of a shooter as Roy was, and he's not a fabulous athlete. He's athletic. You can't play at that level and not be athletic, but he's not a world-class athlete.
Yeah.
But Wesley Johnson's another guy at Syracuse who I think he doesn't put the ball on the floor quite as well as some of these other guys, but he's a big-time athlete and could be a really good prospect in this draft. But I tend to rank him Wall first, Turner second, and then I would probably go with the kid from Georgia Tech, Derek Favors, third.
Who is the biggest enigma because he was on such a bad team for guards that nobody has any idea how good he is, basically.
Who's that?
Favors.
No, Favors is the big kid from Georgia Tech.
Yeah. Their guards were terrible, though. I watched him. I had no idea if he was good or not.
Yeah, the kid Iman Shumpert could be good, and give him some time. But you're right; they didn't get the ball inside as often as they should have. But Favors is kind of a junior version of Dwight Howard athletically. He's a great athlete. He's not super skilled, and I think if anybody wanted to be really picky about him, he's not really assertive to where you put him on the floor and he wants to rip your head off and he wants to score 25 on you. He kind of takes it when it's there and he doesn't force anything. And, sometimes when he gets the ball, you want him to say, Derek, will you tear the rim down? Get an offensive foul, do something.
Yeah.
But he could be really good in the NBA.
Gut feeling on DeMarcus Cousins in 5 years.
He's a tough case. I like him. I think deep down he's a good kid. I've worked with him before, and he's really immature, and he needs to grow up. He's kind of like Derek Coleman in that regard. Like, he's got big time ability. He can really rebound. His arms go forever. He's not an explosive leaper or anything. He's not going to beat you down the floor. But once he gets there, he's got really good feet and he's got a good skill level. His hands are terrific. He can be, like I used to tell him, you can be as good as you want to be. And I just don't know how good he's going to want to be. I really don't. Honestly, Bill, I wouldn't draft him if I were pulling the trigger on a pick unless it was a later first round pick. Because I would be sort of afraid of what he would do. Like, I think as a GM, you're the guardian of the culture of your team.
Yes.
And I wouldn't put DeMarcus in my team's culture unless I wasn't spending a lot and putting a lot behind it.
As you know, I'm a big, gigantic chemistry guy, and I just think it's too big of a risk to take him in the top 5 because you're rolling the dice. And when you're in the top 5, I'm not sure you can roll the dice. On the other hand, this guy physically, there's just not a lot of guys in the NBA like him anymore. And you think, like, what is his body going to look like 5 years from now?
Yeah.
Could this guy be one of the 3 or 4 strongest inside guys we have in the league? Yeah. So then, you think of him like against, I don't know, Phoenix with Channing Frye trying to guard him in the low post. Like, he really could be a mismatch every night if it all works out, which is why it makes him such a polarizing top 5 guy. I don't know.
I agree with you. Like, I'm the same way. I wouldn't draft something you're concerned is going to be a problem. And I would have concern that DeMarcus would be a problem.
Yeah.
What I'm hopeful of is that which a lot of players do, is that they kind of mature quickly and grow, and they kind of, they turn into an adult. And he's still a kid that makes kid decisions. And you could look back in 10 years and go, I can't believe he went at number 4. He should have been higher. Or you could look back in 10 years going, I can't believe he went at number 4. They shouldn't never have taken him there.
We haven't had one of these guys in a while. It's been a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, you know what though? Josh Smith was one of those guys.
That's 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's been 5 years. Yeah, has it been 5 years?
Yeah.
I can't remember the draft year, but Josh Smith was one of those guys. Which I thought he had a good chance to fail, and that's why he was taken 17th. I mean, he was a top 5 talent.
Yeah.
And I think I said it on draft night, like, this guy should be in the top 5 because they don't make athletes like him very often. But he didn't work hard, and his attitude was bad, and he's done a pretty darn good job.
Yeah, but as you said, he went 17th, now at that point you really want to take that risk.
There it's an acceptable risk, and DeMarcus would be as well. He'd probably be an acceptable risk a little bit earlier than that in this year's draft.
Oh, in this draft, yeah, I would say by 7. By 7 or 8, it would be a joke if he didn't go. I think it's 5 deep, and I would say I have the same order as you: Favors 3rd, Cousins 4. Although I wouldn't take him if I had the 4th pick, I'd try to trade it, and then Wes Johnson 5th, and then I don't know if I'd want the 6th pick in this draft.
Yeah, I've got Greg Monroe from Georgetown at number 6. But
yeah,
there are a bunch of players in this draft that could wind up being really good players down the line. Like, I like Epi Udoh from Baylor a lot, the big kid, the shot blocker. Rebounder.
He's older though, right? Isn't he like 22,
He's older,
23?
yeah, but he's 20. I think he's 22 or 23.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like you said before. Like, it's not like he's got a bunch of miles on him. It's just these other kids are younger.
Yeah.
If we were buying cars, I would say, take the one with less miles on it. But, what these other guys aren't playing 20 years, and he's only going to play 10. He's going to be productive right away. And
because he'll block shots at least.
What's that?
He'll block shots at least.
Yeah, he'll block shots, and he'll rebound at a high rate, and he can run a little bit. And he can also make a face-up jump shot, which a number of these younger guys, like Ed Davis from North Carolina, is I think most people would say, well, he's a better prospect. He's got a bigger upside or all that stuff that we say. but I think Udo's a better player, and it's kind of like Brandon Wright from North Carolina a few years ago. There's a lot of space between kind of what he should be able to do and what he can do, and what if he doesn't rise to that level? Then you're stuck in the spot between potential and production, and I wouldn't want to be stuck there with Ed Davis.
Wouldn't you say though that it seems like NBA teams are getting smarter in this regard, and they're going for the production, and they're starting to realize like, hey, if this guy's not rebounding in college, pretty good chance he's not going to rebound in the pros. Like there is a correlation for the most part, and I look at somebody like Ed Davis and. Whatever. You could say he was in a bad team and all that stuff. But on the other hand, he wasn't producing in college. So what would make me think that he's going to go to the pros against much better competition after he's been paid, and then the light bulb's going to go off? That would be my fear with him.
Yeah, I think that's true of a number of guys. You're going to make – I think anybody who does this job in the NBA is going to make mistakes. Everybody, whether it's Jerry West or you name it, that has done this makes mistakes. It's impossible to be right on this stuff all the time. But – now you're dealing with guys like I think a tough case this year is going to be that kid from Texas, Avery Bradley. He's really talented, and I'm not sure there's a better individual defender in the draft, but he's not ready. But if you give him a little while, Brandon Jennings wasn't ready last year either. He had a heck of a year. He made a pretty good argument for Rookie of the Year. So maybe Bradley will pick it up quickly and play, sort of mature quickly, and he'll be a heck of a player. But there's some risk involved with that kid, and like you're saying, he wasn't productive in his first year, but he's got the tools to be really good. And Drew Holiday, who's going to be here at the lottery tonight for Philly, he's another example. Like he didn't do anything as a freshman, but he was relatively productive as a rookie in the NBA.
I look at Cole Aldridge and I just see a guy who I know what he's going to be. He's going to be either a little bit better than Joe Prisbilla or, a lot better, but not an all-pro, not an all-star. Maybe a guy who gives you the 13 points, 9 rebounds, shoots 57%, doesn't do anything you can't do guy. In this draft, that might be the 6th pick. Why not?
It could be. I've got him slotted more at 11. I don't have my list doesn't take into account who's drafting where. I'm not trying to predict where they're going. I'm saying here's who I would take in this order. Like if I had I don't have everybody calls it a board. I don't have a board. I have a list. I don't have a wall dedicated to this kind of thing. But
I'm saying when we look back at this, he might just end up being the 6th best guy in this draft.
He could be
because he's just steady,
but he could also be the 26th because guys like Eric Bledsoe from Kentucky could be more could be a better NBA type player. Bledsoe could be like Nate Robinson or somebody like that. That's kind of the type of player he could be. And I remember when a really good buddy of mine in the NBA told me years ago. He says, Nate Robinson's not going to be a great player, but he will not fail. He said that kid will not fall out of this league because he's too determined. And I don't know if Bledsoe's got that, but he reminds me a little bit of Robinson.
I'm glad you like him because he's also my favorite 10. He'll go somewhere from 10 to 20. He's my favorite 10 to 20 guy in this draft. I just think he played basically out of position. He's a point guard, and he really couldn't play point guard that much because John Wall was there. And I thought he adapted to whatever the situation was. And I just like him. I think he's competitive. I think he translates, as you said, to a pro game better than college. And, that's somebody like the Celtics are picking 19. And I'm thinking, man, could we get somebody like that at 19? That's
if he's available. There are other guys. And it just depends on what you like. It's kind of like you said before that after the top 5, who you like is who you should take. There's no, it's not like you'd be laughed out of the room if you took Eric Bledsoe at 15. If you're picking 15 and he's available and you're not crazy about anything else, you're not going to get fired for taking him. You might get fired for taking somebody. Who knows? You might get fired for taking somebody else.
Is Luke Babbitt the Joe Alexander of this draft? He's just rising and rising.
No, Alexander, and I didn't disagree with having him in the top 10 at the time because he's so athletic and he could shoot, and but he didn't have an aptitude to pick up the nuances of the game. And I thought that he might, because Bob Huggins had been working with him at West Virginia, and he was getting better. But it hadn't clicked for him. I think Babbitt is more competitive. He's more skilled. He's got a better feel for the game. He's not as athletic as Alexander was. I mean, guy gets to the free throw line, when you foul him, he shoots like 92%. He never misses. And
I like that.
Yeah, he's a good, he has a really good feel. And he's competitive as all get out, which I really like. I just think, being some people say, well, Adam Morrison this and Joe Alexander that. He only gets compared to white players who have failed. And it kind of, I think it kind of raises some question marks about the kid that shouldn't be there. I think if he were from Lithuania, you could rank him where I've got him at number 9, and nobody'd bat an eye. They'd go, oh, great. The only guy they'd bring up is Darko then. Then they'd say, well, Darko wasn't very good. But other than that, the European guys don't seem to get criticized as much as the American guys that are similar to them.
I didn't even know until you just said that. I didn't even know he was white, because somehow I never saw him play last year. The only reason I brought up Alexander was because it was somebody that I was kind of in the teens for that whole draft, and then he rose up, and then actually he went 8th, which rarely happens. Like, you get the name floated, and I'm looking at Doug Gottlieb's list right now, and he had Babbitt ranked number 8. Now, this is somebody that was going to the Celtics a couple weeks ago, and now seems like he has a real chance to climb into the top 12. A little surprising.
Yeah, I mean, and some of it, Alexander, a part of his was a workout thing.
And the tournament.
This is an old story, but I like it. Years ago, Corey Maggette, when he was coming out of Duke, he left after his freshman year. He felt like he was going to struggle in some of these workouts because he wasn't super skilled. He was better in a 5-on-5 situation. He was certainly better in full court. And these workouts, a lot of times, you'll be by yourself doing shooting workouts. And a friend of mine was working with him at the time and said, listen, if you start to struggle and think you need a little bit of a break, walk over to where you're keeping your stuff and make sure you keep it over by where all the NBA personnel are, and take your shirt off. Go over there, take your shirt off, and then come back out and work out. Because the guy was built like Adonis. I mean, still is. And the guy took his shirt off, and everybody's like, "Oh my God!" Because that's why those workouts can skew things. They can skew it the wrong way. Because when I watched Amari Stoudemire at Phoenix, I watched all his workouts, and he wasn't very skilled, and he made a lot of mistakes and all that stuff. And I got all wrapped up in he can't do this and he can't do that. Meanwhile, when the ball was up on the rim, he dunked everything and could run like the wind, and he made his free throws and all that stuff. And I probably didn't rank him as high as I should have.
So Luke Babbitt, basically, he should just tell people he's from Spain and be like, Luca Babita.
Yeah, exactly. Or Luke Babazinski.
Yeah.
And he's, he'd be top 10. Nobody'd worry about it, except somebody would say, well, Darko Milicic went number 2, and look what happened. He wasn't any good. And, but remember when Yao was coming over from China and people were saying, well, he couldn't dunk?
Right.
You gotta, some of these guys, like I saw Darko Milicic work out, and if I saw him today, I would still say he should have been the number 2 pick. Because the guy's he's got all kind of skill, but you put him in a 5-on-5 game, and it just doesn't translate. But if Dumars didn't take him, if Detroit didn't take him, and he turned out to be great, they'd be killing him. It's a weird thing. Like, everybody makes those mistakes, and I don't blame Dumars for doing it, because he didn't need Carmelo at the time. They needed somebody like Milicic, and I still think it was a risk worth taking. It didn't work out, certainly.
I still blame him. I thought Carmelo Anthony was going to be great. Like, to me, he's a can't miss, and to me, it was the same thing as the Durant Odin thing. Durant just wasn't going to miss.
Then?
I wrote it. I wrote that. Chad and I did a back and forth where we picked the whole first round, and I had the first pick, and I picked Durant for Portland. I just felt like I knew he couldn't miss, and Odin had these red flags. Like, he had the one leg that was shorter than the other, and he had a terrible workout, and he was nervous, and he had these things that just worried me. And also, I watched him in college, and really the only game I saw him dominate was the championship game. And I saw him kind of just running around, and he just kind of seemed out of it. I have the $64,000 question for you.
Okay.
America wants to know. You are the master of admiring other people's wingspans. Who has the best wingspan in the 2010 draft?
You know what? I'm not really sure right now. I probably have to. I think DeMarcus Cousins probably does. It's like in the 7'4" range. But there are a bunch of guys that are longer than all get out. Hassan Whiteside of Marshall's got one. But I haven't finished all that work yet on gathering all the length information. I went a whole draft without saying long.
Stop it.
I did.
You did?
And you didn't even notice. I was really disappointed in you. I went an entire draft because I had been, all my friends had been killing me over. There were drinking games. I guess there had been some drinking games for every time I said long or length or I think upside was in there, even though I don't think I say upside very much.
No, there are other guys that say upside more.
But I went a whole draft and I did not say long or length one time. And I didn't say wingspan. I had a couple that were pretty good. I wish I didn't even remember that until you brought that up. But I wish I could remember with some of the things I said. But
well, I remember one. Didn't you create spurt ability? I think you did.
No, mine was second jump ability. But it wasn't. People had said like I had created a new word, but it was just second jump ability, and so they said I said second jump ability.
I like that.
That's a Clark Kellogg thing, the spurt ability.
I guess second jump ability. The better word would be re-jump ability.
Yeah, exactly.
I got Chad Ford to start using nuclear. Because here's the thing with the draft terms. Like, there's only you got 9 or 10, and freakish, we hear a lot of freakish. We hear a lot of upside, hear a lot of wingspan, long, but nobody was really trying to come up with any new ones. So I like that you had second jump ability. I love nuclear. I like when that's involved. I also had drop jaw was one I created a couple years ago for somebody who's drop jaw athleticism. I don't know. It just sounds like it would be impressive.
It's hard when you're talking about guys and you're doing it back to back to back to back to make it sound different. And, people say, well, he keeps talking about the guys being long or a guy being a great athlete and all that stuff. Well, but it's what are you supposed to say? And but I'm cool with it. I think it's great. I mean, I always kind of like it when I get a hard time about that stuff. And I loved it when guys, when I was saying, when I did that one year, I can't remember, it was 3 years ago maybe, where I intentionally did not say long or length or anything like that. Some of the things that I substituted for it, I got email messages going, what are you talking about? Like, what does that mean? And I had used a thesaurus and gotten out. I did a lot of work trying to figure out if I could get through that whole draft. And I was worried I wasn't going to be able to do it, and I would just give up. But I got the whole way through.
Well, I will spend the next month thinking of a new wrinkle for you for the draft. I think the key here is the chemistry wrinkle. Maybe that, because you mentioned before about when we were talking about Cousins, maybe there's some sort of chemistry type of adjective.
Well, you had a great one when I used to say high character a lot.
Yeah.
And I had called somebody the ultimate high character guy, and I think you had hammered me saying, what is this kid? He said, I thought that was Gandhi.
He surpassed Gandhi.
I'm still laughing over that.
Maybe Gandastic. I'll come up with something for you. I'll text you. Because I do think this chemistry thing, this is no accident that a lot of these teams that made, like the Suns, for instance, I think their run to the conference finals was really fueled by chemistry as much as anything else. And you see like the Magic, the Cavs, their chemistry fell apart. Maybe chemistry is something that we really need to look at a little more closely.
Yeah, and guys do. The NBA does that. It's just when you insert a new personality in there, a lot of times you don't know how it's going to be, and how it's going to work out, and whether guys are going to get along and all that. It's tough stuff. I mean, I think these NBA guys earn their money, and I think by and large do an unbelievably good job. And I always compare it to the NFL, where you see the amount of mistakes that are made by the NFL. It's hard. This is really hard, and it's easy for guys like you and me, and we should do it to second guess and all that stuff. That's part of the fun of it. But if all of us had to have our mistakes out there, because I'm sure you've made just as many as I have, and
yes,
we tend to, like, if you're anything like me, I tend to talk about the times I was right more often than the times I was wrong.
My worst ever was Okafor over Dwight Howard.
That was mine too.
I just thought Okafor was a sure thing. I didn't see any way he wasn't going to be a multiple All-Star, and I still don't know what happened to the guy.
Well, I don't know. I didn't think he was going to be an All-Star. I just thought that year It was a safer pick for a guy that was going to block shots, rebound, and I think his offensive game had a chance to be pretty good. Rather than, I thought Howard was going to be a 12-point, 12-rebound, 4-block shot guy, which was outstanding and worthy of the number one pick. I would have taken him second, but I just figured that like you said, Okafor was safer, and I'd seen Howard play in college or in high school, and I wasn't sure. And now you look back on that and you go, why would I even have considered that when, you look at the guy's build, and you're going, you said, I'd take him number one. I wouldn't have taken anybody else. I wouldn't even considered it.
The guys that have screwed me up the most over the years have been the high school guys. That's been my worst success rate because I was always geared toward, I'd rather take the proven thing. And I think now that's not as big of a variable. The one Melo over Darko and Durant over Odin were my two biggest. Oh, and Chris Paul over Marvin Williams. Those are my three biggest wins of the decade, but I had some bad ones too. I like talking about the good ones.
I had Darren Williams ranked ahead of Chris Paul that year, and
wow,
I thought he was the better player, but it was 1 and 1A, and I had Brandon Roy ranked second one year in the draft. I think it was the year Bogut came out. I still would have taken Bogut number one because I
love Brandon Roy.
Big guys. Yeah, Roy's great. I mean, it's just so hard to get a big guy and a good one that you tend to make a mistake with size over that, and that's why so few point guards have been taken number one. But that's changing now with the new rules.
Yeah, and I think Darren Williams is a good example of somebody that when they drafted him, the NBA rules were still changing. Somebody said on my podcast, McHale was saying how he thought with the old rules, Darren Williams would have been more devastating when you're allowed to be a little more physical with the opposing guards on defense. He was like, this guy we'd be speaking of him as one of the best ever. Oh, but absolutely. Now he can't do that stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, so are you working tonight?
Yeah. I got the lottery. I've been to the lottery more often than Elgin Baylor.
Is that possible?
Yeah, his plaque used to be nailed down. The other ones they're movable.
It's an emotional night. They're going to turn over Elgin's seat to Chris Wallace. It's like a passing the torch type thing.
There's no way. If I were a GM, I would send an underling every time. There was no way I would go.
I'm friends with Houston's general manager Daryl Morey, and I wanted him to send.
By the way.
Yeah, he's great, but he ended up in the lottery because Yao and T-Mac got hurt, and they still had a winning season, but he was in the lottery. But I wanted to go as his lottery guy. He wouldn't do it.
Oh, that would have been great.
Yeah, I think people would have been
out of the league. I mean, David Stern have him. He'd wind up in some dumpster in Jersey somewhere. But
that was why he didn't want to do it. Yeah, he thought David Stern would not think that was too funny. But I was all ready to go. I would have rocket paraphernalia, all that stuff, and.
Oh, and all kind of good luck charms in your pocket.
Yeah, absolutely. It would have been good.
Remember one year when Larry Harris was the GM of the Bucks and they won the Bogut draft.
Yeah.
He tried to take out something. He's so nervous. He was taking out a good luck charm from his pocket, and it was a brand new tailored suit. So he still had the belt loops. They give it when you get a suit tailored. They have extra belt loops in the pocket, and he pulls out all these belt loops on national television.
Oh, no, I vaguely remember that.
Oh my God, that was funny.
And he also had deer in the headlights too. It'll be interesting.
He's sweating. He pulled like the Albert Brooks flop sweat for broadcast news. It was great.
Well, the funniest scenario today will be if Minnesota wins, and now yet another point guard, David Codd, has to make a decision for. That's what I'm rooting for, but we'll see. Jay Bilas,
the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, Jay Bilas, thanks so much. A pleasure having you on. I wish it happened sooner.
Great to be with you, Bill. Thanks.
All right, take care.
See you, brother.
All right, a little bit of time left. Let's call one of my buddies who has a horse in this lottery race today. My buddy Joe House, diehard Wizards fan. Doesn't know we're calling. We're going to just try him at work. Let's go.
It's Joe House.
What's happening?
What is happening?
I don't know. Playoffs?
Yeah. Playoffs. It's exciting.
You sound loud.
I do?
Yeah.
I'm excited.
You were making love to the phone almost.
It's the playoffs. It was a great game last night. It was a disappointing game, but it was a great game.
Kobe was very good. And actually somebody told me today that a team doctor of a friend of mine told him that when you get your knee drained like that, it feels fantastic for the first 24, 36 hours. And he predicted that Kobe was going to have a huge game last night. Kind of gambling information I wish somebody had told me before the game.
I was just going to say that's helpful intelligence that could have gone a long way to framing how I would have thought about that game.
Because he did look good. I mean, he had a little explosiveness. He had the big thing he had last night, I thought, was on his jump shot. being able to really like push off and get up in the air on it, which we haven't seen that much of from him.
Yeah, and I also liked his attitude, and I think, there's that relationship between how confident he's feeling, making a couple buckets, and then he sort of gets that FU glint in the eye.
Yeah.
And
well, here's the thing, though. Supposedly, so the knee drains, feels great, but then about 48 hours pass, and then you find out if the fluid builds back up and all that stuff. So that might have been the best he's going to feel all series. Or it might not. He might be that way the whole time. I don't know.
Well, has he gotten it drained at any other point in the playoffs?
I mean, that was the first time I remember reading about it. But, it happened to Pierce during the season. He had a whole bunch of fluid drained. It just doesn't sound good.
Yeah,
I don't know that much about it, but, man, it doesn't sound that good. I remember what happened to Pierce. It just made me feel like, oh.
It sounds like kind of a workplace hazard, though. I mean, with the miles those guys have on their bodies, it doesn't strike me. It certainly would make me personally concerned, but I don't exercise for a living.
True. And another thing is when they remove those meniscuses.
Yeah, it doesn't sound good.
No, and it's something that now that people are just getting smarter in general, I think. It doesn't sound like it's a good thing to have the shock absorber in your knee missing from your knee for a long period of time.
DeJuan Blair's out there.
Well, he's missing like everything.
And he's out there doing it to it.
Yeah, but Jameer Nelson's missing his. Chris
he looked
Paul.
Great, by the way.
He did. I thought he played good in that game.
I don't know who on the Celts can stop him.
Well, Rondo should be able to stay in front of him, but he has that weird herky-jerky style that when he's going, it's really tough to stay in front of him.
Yeah, I was really impressed.
It was a fascinating series. As an outsider, with no dog in this race, did you think we learned anything from that game, or was that just a typical Orlando crappy, haven't played in a week, played a crappy team beforehand game?
Well, it's the haven't played in a week. I wouldn't call it typical Orlando because they've looked pretty good. They've come into these playoffs and handled their business. But I don't have an answer for it, but I dislike how much time these teams have off because the games end up bad flow. So Boston looked tired to me, and Orlando looked rusty to me, and that doesn't make for the brand of basketball that I'm looking for in the playoffs. But I give all credit to Boston. Boston has the eye of the tiger. Those guys are focused. I thought the podcast you did with JJ Redick, he said it himself. I mean, those guys are locked in right now.
Yeah, we're locked in. It's a good thing. I think with the schedule, the thing that screwed it up was TNT gets the West, and ESPN and ABC get the East. And I think what happened, what the logical move would have been to have the West start on Saturday or Sunday, but the TNT had Monday slated for a telecast. So it becomes like one of those weird TV. I don't know why they can't figure that stuff out on the fly a little bit better.
I agree. It's the 21st century.
Yeah.
We have Twitter now.
Well, it's really bizarre that the Celtics series would start before the Lakers series.
That's exactly right.
That doesn't make sense.
It does not make sense. It is weird to me that Boston looked tired, by the way. They had a number of days to rest.
Those Sunday afternoon games are always a little goofy.
That's true.
Especially you play a bunch of those night games in a row. And I also thought that Cleveland series took a lot out of them. They really had to play. They played hard that whole series except for the one game 3. But in the other 5 games,
right.
They went pedal to the metal.
So if they celebrated a little Wednesday night, they really only had kind of half of Thursday and then Friday and Saturday to get themselves back up and ready for a game in Sunday afternoon.
It was Thursday night, so they really only had one day and they had to fly.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly right.
I was impressed by how focused they were at the end of the Cleveland series. Like, there was really no celebrating at all. And if anything, they were mad afterwards that I think they felt like there was too much attention paid to LeBron and what happened to him. And
so they're working the old nobody believed in us.
A little bit, yeah. A little bit of an FU, a little nobody believed in us, a little bit why aren't you talking about us?
I didn't believe in them.
Well, nobody did. Why would you?
Yeah, why would you?
They mailed it in for 4 months. How do you feel, again, with no dog in this race, about Rashid taking the regular season off? And now, I don't know if you saw on Sunday, there was a great moment. Rondo, fast break. All of a sudden, this I see this 7'1" African American man in a Celtics jersey sprinting down the court with a little gray patch on the back of his head. And I'm thinking, is that Rasheed Wallace? Running full speed, gets the pass from Rondo and tries to do a running one-hand slam and gets fouled. The fastest I've seen him run all season, hands down.
Well, he's probably kind of the best and most pointed example of this cost-benefit analysis that every team in the league has to run through with vets. Vets at this stage of their career.
Yeah.
Can you hold your nose for a whole regular season and just get whatever these vets in kind of that Rasheed mode are able to deliver? Can you hold your nose? Because at some point in the playoffs it's going to pay off. Now, the thing you ask for out of those guys is to not rub it in everybody's face, and that's the problem that I had with Rasheed this year. He looked like he went out of his way to kind of rub it in the face of the Celtics fandom that he was just going to be fat all season, and he was going to run three-point line to three-point line, and that's all he was really willing to do. He really wasn't going to break a sweat, and everybody was just going to have to live with it. I wish he hadn't done that in such a dramatic way, but you have him right now when you need him the most against just the right guy, and so, cost-benefit-wise, you say, well, it cost us a lot. It kind of stunk for 7 or 8 months, but maybe he's going to be worth it.
Yeah, extending that point, my dad, who paid I don't know how much money for season tickets this year, but they were expensive. And it just makes him mad when this whole the last 24 hours everybody going crazy about Rasheed and we told you he was going to show up and all that stuff. And it's kind of a slap in the face to everybody who paid for regular season tickets, especially the season ticket holders who had to sit through that team. And my dad, it's a pretty interesting point from my dad, or not a point, but just his take. He said that in all the years he's had season tickets, which is 36 years, and he's seen some bad seasons, like the late 70s, we had a couple bad ones. The middle of this decade, or the last decade, was terrible. The 07 team lost 18 straight. He said this was his least favorite Celtic regular season because he didn't feel like they tried.
Well, they tried the first 25 games, first 30 games. They looked great.
But, they lost 16 games, and he feels like he personally went to maybe 15 games that they just mailed in.
Well, he would be a person that's kind of entitled to a point of view on this, and it would be his perspective that they stopped trying or that they were getting ready for the playoffs, because there's a difference there, both of which, kind of look the same, but there's a difference.
Right.
So he felt like they weren't trying, not that they were just sort of resting up and getting ready for the stretch run.
Right. But his point is, okay, I get it. You're resting for the playoffs and hoping that you have this on-off switch. But on the other hand, right now I'm paying for all of these games, and you guys aren't trying. And this is supposed to be a product.
It's a fair point. Now think about a person that paid for season tickets to see the Washington Wizards. And think about what that person was treated to over 41 games this year.
True. And that's what I said to my dad. I was like, you're not... Look, how about me and the Clippers? 4 straight years of no playoffs, and in February they trade the one guy who can play defense on the entire team for 2 expiring contracts to save $1 million, and then I have to watch this crap team the last 2 months, and I'm giving away tickets and doing it was just terrible.
Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow.
I'm glad you brought up the Wizards because the lottery is tonight.
The lottery is tonight.
What are your odds for the Wizards?
I think that's like 10%, something like that, somewhere around that 10% range. High single digits, low double digits.
I guess you can't gamble on this stuff, and why would you? Because the odds are bad. But when you consider the Wizards' history, it would make sense for them to win the lottery this year. Like, there's no superstar. The best guy is a point guard. You already have so much money committed to this guy who's a point guard and dominates the ball. This would be a typical lottery for them to win.
I don't know about that. I really like John Wall. I think he's a terrific talent, and I think he's going to be transformative for whatever team he goes to. I would say this, though, and then I'm going to give a little plug. Dan Steinberg of the Washington Post has a sports blog, and he did a great piece this morning on the Wizards in the lottery. 12 of the past 13 years, they have either stayed in the slot that they were slated to get or done worse.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, so, like, from a gambler's perspective, that almost suggests you ought to go heavy, that they're going to move up a little. You know, I think that counter trend is kind of, you know, there. I don't know that it's right to be rooting for the overall number one. I mean, you can be irrational and root for it, but if we crack the top three, that would be a huge accomplishment, because I think Evan Turner and Derek Favors could help the Wizards next year.
You won the Kwame Brown year.
We won the Kwame Brown year.
That's the only time you've ever even finished top three?
No, I think we've been top three, but I think we got what we deserved. You know, I think was Rashid a 3-pick or a 4-pick?
No, he was a 5-pick.
Oh, well, maybe we haven't been top three other than Kwame. I didn't, you know, go through the last 13 years in painful detail because I can barely stand it. But you know, most of them are like 5, 6, 7. The annoying thing is how many times the team's been in the lottery the last 15 to 20 years.
Who represents you at the lottery tonight?
I don't know. I haven't looked at it. Leonsis would be great. Somebody wrote that it should be Ovechkin. I thought that would be hilarious and fantastic.
Oh, I just clicked Steinberg, who, by the way, is very talented.
Yeah, I love him.
12 of the last 13 trips, failed to move up and actually moved down. They have sent John Nash, Irene Poland, Tom Gugliotta, Chris Webber, Susan O'Malley, Rod Higgins, Juan Dixon, Ernie Grunfeld, and Flip Saunders to the NBA. They had their mascot walk all the way to Secaucus in a PR stunt. That didn't work. They brought the horseshoe of the Kentucky Derby winner. That didn't work. And so on and so on. 1989, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Bad times.
It just goes
brother.
on and on.
Yeah, so your dad wants to complain that they didn't show up the last 15 games. Hey, Doc. I'm not feeling you, my brother.
Yeah, I mean, with this Ovechkin kick in the groin that you guys got in round one.
There's nothing going on in Washington, D.C. sports-wise. I have a date circled on my calendar for Strasburg's arrival. Steven Strasburg, the pitcher, the phenom for the Washington Nationals. That's the only thing I have to look forward to. And I'm not saying the date because there are still tickets available for that date, and I want to go buy tickets before the game sold out.
You never got a chance to really gripe about Ovechkin.
Oh, I don't gripe. You know, that was
the whole performance, I should say.
Yeah, it was a team that was built for the regular season, and I think, you know, the gripe, if I was going to gripe, is that the expectations were out of sorts with, you know, how the team was kind of engineered. In retrospect, it feels a little foolish to you know, that they were playing the Metallica song "Nothing Else Matters," and the Stanley Cup was the point. Well, this team isn't really built for that. They weren't engineered for a deep run to the Stanley Cup.
Well, then why was everybody picking them then?
Because they had a dominant regular season. They had a dominant regular season, and you know, they're that offensive skill set. They're so talented with the technical skills. You know, Alexander Semin and Nicholas Backstrom, who just re-signed to a big deal, which is great. And then Ovechkin, you know, their goal scoring. It lulled everybody into thinking, even legitimate hockey people, into thinking that they would just outscore everybody. But, you know.
Well, here's my problem with hockey, though.
This is the thing. It's will over skill. That's what hockey's about. It's will over skill.
And it's the hot goalie.
And it's the hot goalie. I'm stealing Barry Melrose's line. He's the author of the will over skill. But he's right. And it's the hot goalie. And everybody's finding out how hot that goalie is. My
thing with the playoffs with the NHL is this. If you have a system, like, first of all, the NHL fans are funny because they get mad at me that I don't watch the regular season. And then when I watch the playoffs, they say I'm a bandwagon fan. Well, why will I watch the regular season if you have a regular season that leads to the 7 and 8 seeds playing in a conference finals? Yeah, all that tells me is that the regular season's meaningless. We just saw 2 teams win Game 7s on the road in the second round. It doesn't seem like there's home ice advantage or a regular season advantage. It's just basically it's a 7-game series where anything can happen. Why even have the regular season?
I don't have the chops to do the research or the analysis, but one thing that is unique about the 7 and 8 teams in the East that are playing right now is that those guys were playing playoff hockey for almost a full month before the playoffs started. So they came in like every game for almost a full month for the Flyers and the Canadians, dictated whether they were going to go home in April or whether they were going to keep playing. So that's one big thing to me, but based on what I saw my own self with my own eyes. I went to those, a handful of those Caps Canadians games, and the Canadians came out on point. I mean, talked about locked in. Those guys, Mike Camilleri was awesome that whole series. And the goalie, after they lost Game 3 in Washington, they kind of got shelled, and they did a little bit of a reactionary, knee-jerk kind of move by swapping goalies. Halak didn't play the whole series. They put in this guy, Carey, I think is his name, and the Caps shelled him and jumped out to that 3-1 lead. When they reinserted Halak, he was locked back in, and that was it. It was the series. Game over.
Great name for a goalie.
Yeah.
Halak.
It is. It's a good one.
Well, I think you can make a strong case that they go 60-game regular season. They have some sort of giant tournament in the middle of the season that clinches spots so that nobody even has to play in round one. The two teams that make the finals, or the team that wins doesn't even have to play in round one or whatever. Something that I'm watching hockey in the middle of the season right now. I'm not.
It's interesting. I like it because I do love anything that's going to bring kind of another tournament to bear. I mean, tournament hockey is the greatest. The Olympics were so much fun.
Yeah, why not? My thing is, why not? Are we really messing with the Mona Lisa here with the hockey regular season? And then, so let's say you have this giant mid-season tournament. And by the way, we're going to get to basketball in a second for this. You have this tournament where the top two teams win the tournament. They get buys in round one, and whoever wins the final game, they get home ice and some sort of Stanley Cup, and they win whatever they call the stupid cup. So then you have another tournament. The playoffs would be the second tournament. And maybe that one is, 14 teams or whatever. Or I guess it would be 7 matchups, and then you have the 2 buys. So that would work. I mean, why not?
It could work. It could work. The other thing is, I wouldn't mind there being a loser's bracket. Why can't that? People in Washington were crushed by the Caps losing, but what we were really crushed by is that ended all sports for the whole city for basically a month. Now the Nationals, God bless them, have been playing some pretty decent baseball for the first time in about 4 years. But really, it just shut down everything in one fell swoop. One Wednesday night.
So you're saying like a double elimination bracket?
Yeah, why not? While we're talking about it, I think a loser's bracket could be great.
Well, for basketball, it gets a little tougher because it is a little more conventional in basketball. At the same time, 82 games is too much.
Well, and home court matters in basketball.
Yeah,
it definitely
really
makes. And your point is right. Both those seasons, if you're going to do these kind of tournament things, need to be shorter. But you have to give the owners a way to replace the revenue.
Well, the way you replace it in the NBA would be my idea with the 70-game season, and then you have the whole, the
play-in for the 8.
Oh, yeah, for the 7 and 8 seeds in both conferences.
Yeah.
You have a whole tournament.
Did you give that tournament a name yet?
I called it the Entertaining as Hell tournament.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Because, if it happened, nobody would be like, this is bad, I'm not going to be entertained by this. People would be excited, and also, more importantly, it would prevent teams from tanking.
Did you also say what would you win? Was that the one with the Stern Cup?
Yeah, you win the David Stern Cup.
Yeah, I like it.
And then I think I had 2 versions of it. One was the 7 and 8 seeds for each conference, and then the other one was you blow it out and you just make it. We don't have conferences for the tournament anymore. You just have the 16 seed.
Yeah, I
March
love
Madness
that.
type thing.
I love
basically
that.
The 15 and 16 seeds are up for grabs.
Yeah, I would love seeing the East against the West in just sort of regular way, playoff rounds.
I do think, though, the way that the regular seasons are more important in the NBA than the NHL because, like, for instance, this year, Orlando, if they beat the Celtics, they still will have home court, in the finals against the Lakers. Even though the Lakers were the number 1 seed, Orlando had a better record, so Orlando would have home court in that series. So the regular season did matter for them.
Yeah, and that's the point. The regular season matters in the NBA because home court matters. Home court matters, and I think it's different in hockey.
I also think round 1 they should get rid of the 7-game series. It should be best of 5.
I couldn't
That was
agree
so
more.
much more fun in the 90s
really
than best of 5. And if you have to reward the 1 seeds make it so that the 8 seed only gets one home game in round 1. So the 1 seed would be games 1, 2, 4, and 5 would be home. Round 3 is the only game the 8 seed gets, and that's your advantage for the 1 seed for doing what they did. Protects you.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's totally appropriate.
God, remember in the mid-'90s? We were on the phone like every night when we had like J-Kid in Phoenix going against GP in Seattle, 5-game series. Those were great.
They were intense.
Yeah.
That Seattle series where Robert Pack and Dikembe Mutombo from Denver, went and beat Seattle. That was,
yeah, those are great. And you know what? You shouldn't win the title if you can't win a best-of-5 series.
That's
so
exactly
it's not
right. 5 is enough. The better team should win most of the time.
Exactly.
5 is enough.
So who do we like in this lottery? Because to me, it feels like Walt, Turner, Favors, and Cousins, and then a giant drop-off.
I agree.
So if you get 5 in this draft, it kind of sucks because then you have to start talking yourself into Greg Monroe.
Yeah, that's tough for Cole Aldrich, right?
Cole, I can't even say his name. Monroe, I'm starting to talk myself into a little just because of the whole, if he had better teammates with some of the skills that he have,
I don't know.
A little more. You saw him more than I did.
Yeah, he wasn't surrounded by bad players, and he played in the Big East, which was a great conference and a tough conference. My problem with him mainly is consistency, but he's young, so that's kind of an overcomable thing. I really love his high post game. I love how Georgetown, when they could manage it, would bring him out to the free throw line and kind of run their offense through him. He's a great passer.
That's what I like about him, though. The right kind of team?
Yeah, he's fast enough to go to the basket with either hand. But he was just spotty. He didn't bring it every night, and that would be my main sort of concern with him.
Is that a red flag for you?
That's a little bit of an issue. Now, he didn't not bring it every night with the same kind of bad body language and bad attitude that Cousins looked like he had all the time. He looked like he was trying. He just, he was flat a lot. Cousins is he looks like the evolutionary Beasley to me. I wouldn't touch him with, a 15-foot pole.
He had that one spin move in the tournament that made me think, he could really come back to haunt some teams.
Who, Cousins?
Yeah.
I know.
Athletically, he is like, I think it's different than Beasley because Beasley was always like a finesse offensive player. He was undersized. Like, they were red flags beyond his character red flags.
Yeah.
Cousins is his athletic force.
Yeah, okay, all right, I get what
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
and the right team with the right mentor, it'd be really hard to see him totally bombing.
There's only a few of those, though.
I know. Well, he goes to Golden State, it's over. We might as well just get the rehab center wing ready for him, or there's some sort of something.
There's a handful of those, right?
The mental rehab center.
Is he going to be good in Indiana? Is he going to be good in Philly?
See, I think Indiana could be good for him.
Maybe Indiana.
He had the legend looking over him.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
The legend's, hey, come on over to my house for dinner.
Detroit?
Talk about stuff. Detroit, actually, he'd get playing time.
Minnesota?
That's a disaster.
Sacramento?
I played a game on Twitter today about, first of all, we can agree. Well, actually, let me ask you. What would be funnier if Minnesota won the lottery or if Utah won the lottery with the New York Knicks pick?
I'm going to say Utah.
Utah winning the lottery?
Yeah, that would be funnier to me.
Would that be funny or cruel?
They're the same thing as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. I'd still think it would be funnier if the T-Wolves won and then David Kahn did the whole thing about, hey, just because we have Rubio and Flynn doesn't mean we wouldn't take John Wall. I think that would be on the floor. How funny would that be if they passed on John Wall?
It's only incrementally
to take Turner.
a little bit more funny, though, because of what a disaster last year was.
Best team to win the lottery, like team that could be a playoff team next year if they won, obviously Utah, but I think if Sacramento got John Wall and put him with Tariq Evans, that is a suddenly frightening team.
Yeah.
Athletically.
Yeah, it's true. They could get out and run. I don't remember seeing them stop anybody all year. Do they play any defense?
Well, John Wall can. We know that.
Yeah, that's true. John Wall can.
The Wizards, I would say, as a fan base, probably need to win this the most.
Yeah, I mean, certainly.
The Wizards or the Sixers, one of those two.
I put in that plug for my hometown heroes. The Wiz are still a couple moves away. I mean, the lottery is only one.
A couple dozen?
Well, I was going to make the joke. It's only one of 8 or 9 or 15 moves that they still have to make to get this thing, back on track and to develop a product that people want to go see.
You know what was the biggest mistake Cleveland made at the deadline? After watching Antoine Jamison, remembering that things I had forgotten about him, like he's a horrendous defensive player and not a guy you can really count on in big games, which you had been telling me all season, and I chose to ignore you.
Yes.
Mike Miller would have made so much sense for them.
Yeah, and he was available.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
then Hickson would have gotten Jamison's minutes, and Mike Miller could have gotten those Jamario Moon, Anthony Parker type minutes and just made threes.
What I'll say too, when Miller was healthy, he had this is probably not this is faint praise. He had the highest basketball IQ of anybody on the Wizards.
Yeah, true.
I don't know which way that runs, but he was really smart. He was their best passer when he was on the floor. I was really impressed seeing him up close and in person this year, but what a good passer he is. I had no idea.
Right.
And he was very smart, like flow-wise, as to when to be looking for his shot and when to pass the ball. And he was a pretty good rebounder, too. He was much longer than I remember him being. He would have really helped them. I agree with you.
Well, we can agree that Jamison did not help them.
He did not help them. And in fact, they would have been better off playing Hickson every minute that Jamison got.
Detroit, I think, would almost be better off for them if they got 3. Because they probably need Cousins more than the other two guys anyway. And I'm not saying that they should, if they got number 1, they shouldn't take John Wall or Turner because they should. But I'm saying, let's say they get 3. That's kind of a win for them.
What's their starting 5? What's their starting 5 then?
Their starting 5 does not include a power forward.
Yeah, that's right.
The Clips, I think, just getting the top 3 is a win for them.
Is Jerebko their current power forward?
Jerebko!
I love Jerebko.
I like him too. The Warriors, I think, would be the funniest if they got 3 because then it's just that Cousins is just sitting there staring at him and they could put him with Anthony Randolph and that's a reality show.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And the Nets, obviously, I wrote on Twitter today, I said that would be the riggiest scenario and people were like, well, come on, they have 25% chance to win. It's like, well, yeah, they do, but at the same time, like if you were floating the whole LeBron is heading with the Russian billionaire and the Russian billionaire, that Wall getting the number 1 pick, that ties into that whole thing.
So speaking of reality shows, let's talk about LeBron for 35 seconds.
Yeah, and then you have to go.
Yeah. First of all, is anybody taping what's going to happen with him? I mean, is there any plans?
I don't think that's going to work out.
Come on.
Yeah.
It's the most fascinating thing going right now.
I think after what happened in round 2, I think that idea is out.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
Well, so what is the current, what are we thinking? I dismiss New Jersey. If he chooses New Jersey, that means he's choosing kind of a personal, selfish, fame, notoriety platform over, any kind of serious contemplation of doing something basketball-wise.
Yeah, New Jersey and the Clippers would be the 2 selfish decisions. They would not be basketball decisions.
Well, the Clips at least, there's a semblance of a competitive team there. I mean,
yeah, but you're going to a bad owner, though.
Well, that's the problem. That's exactly right.
I'll tell you though, the Nets. I keep thinking about this Russian billionaire, who we talked about a little last night.
Yeah.
I do think he's going to be capable of some things that we're not maybe prepared for. As I said to you last night, like he will offer Mike Krzyzewski $100 million for 5 years to be the coach. Like some offer that is so staggering, all of us would be like, oh my God.
Don't think I'm not excited for all of that. I just don't know what that has to do with a winning basketball team.
Well, but what if he told LeBron, we'll give you the max, but also I have my 200-foot yacht. You can use any time you guys want. Here are the keys, and also I'm going to have a charter plane. You guys can have your whole team can use it whenever you want.
I think
not necessarily against NBA rules.
There is a value associated with that, and they'll still have to see whether or not it violates the salary cap. But the larger point to me, how does that help them win basketball games?
Well, they have Lopez.
The point is to win basketball games.
They have Lopez. They could trade Devin Harris.
Oh yes, they could. What would they get for him?
They have whatever they're going to have with their lottery pick.
See, this is the problem that I have. with the New Jersey articulation. I think people are too quick to say, "Oh yeah, they kind of already have the pieces." They have the pieces of a team that won 12 games last year. Those are the pieces. I mean, with John Wall.
The other problem is he would have to play in Newark for 2 years.
I think it's 3 years.
2 or 3.
Yeah,
I mean, whatever.
right.
And you can make the case, he could live in Manhattan and just commute there. It's like, yeah, okay, he's still in Newark.
Exactly.
When he could have the choice to be in South Beach or Chicago, all these different places.
Or L.A. for that matter.
All right, we got to go.
Hey.
Talk to you later.
Thanks. Looking forward to some more playoff basketball.
So I get to sign off. Whoa.
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.